classes on the fundamentals of Judaism, and not just the fundamentals of Judaism from the perspective of Jewish philosophy, but from the perspective of chassidus. And I like to learn these classes. I think they give us a very rich perspective on Yiddishkeit and Judaism in general, and to follow the same series, the way that he presented them. The Zohar says that there are three things that are bound with each other: the Torah, the Jewish people, and God. And the Zohar says that there are two layers in this connection. There are two layers: the Jewish people, there's their manifest selves, and there is their deeper selves. In Torah also, there is a deeper element of Torah, and there is a manifest part of Torah. And then also, so to speak, in God, there's the way Hashem is manifest and revealed, and there is also a higher and deeper level of godliness, as God willing will learn. So, the chassidus, which brings to us the inner dimension of Torah, doesn't only reveal to us the inner meaning of the inner dimension of Torah, but through the Torah, we get a deeper picture of all of these three the Torah, the Jewish people, and God are all illuminated in a whole different way through the teachings of chassidus. Every mitzvah has a whole different light through the teachings of chassidus. So everyone said that the fundamentals of Judaism are, since they're not really spoken about so much, the fundamentals of chassidus especially, and yet those are the hardest things to explain because people just gloss over them. And so it's worth it to delve into this a little bit and to figure out and understand a little bit more about who we are and what we're here for. So we see in this week's Torah portion a very strong message about the essence of Jews. There is a deeper connection that we have through the giving of the Torah, which God will get to later. But just in this week's Torah portion, in the first sentence of this week's Torah portion, we have something that underscores what a Jew is about. The first verse of this week's Torah portion is God's words to Abraham: "Leave your birthplace, leave your father's house, and go to the land that I will show you." So Abraham is 75 years old, and he's already very connected to God in many, many ways. At the age of 3, Abraham recognizes Hashem, according to one opinion. According to another opinion, he was 48, 50, and the different ages that are attributed to Abraham's discovery of Hashem are all about different levels of his understanding of godliness. He did recognize Hashem at the age of 3, but the deeper recognition at the age of 48, and yet the Torah doesn't mention any of that. The Torah doesn't talk about Abraham's discovery of Hashem. Torah doesn't. We know from the Talmud that Abraham went with his father Terach to the worship of idolatry. They went together to serve idolatry, and everyone, when they finished the idolatry, went home and they were done with the idolatry. But Abraham was a lot more passionate than all the other worshippers, and Abraham kept on praying the whole day to the idolatry, the idols. And because of his attachment to the idolatry, that's what made him ask questions about what this thing really is, and that's what led him to discover that the idols weren't really real. So, and then we know from a lot more about Abraham's sacrifice for Hashem, the famous encounter that Abraham has with Nimrod. Nimrod is told by Abraham's father Terach that my son's doing dangerous stuff. He just destroyed all the idols in my store, and he's telling all my customers that idols aren't real. You got to talk to him. And Nimrod himself considered himself a deity, and he has an exchange with Abraham. And he asks Abraham, little boy, "Hey, why don't you pray to the gods like everybody else?" And Abraham's like, "Who should I pray to?" And he says, "Why don't you pray to me? I'm also a god." So I'm like, "Well, you're a human being. You could be killed with a knife. So why don't you pray to knives? Pray to metal." So Avram's metal. Metal could be burned with fire. So why don't you pray to fire? Or fire could be put out with water. Why don't you pray to water? Well, water could be moved by wind. So why don't you pray to the wind? Wind could be moved with a human being can stand in the face of the wind. So there's a cycle, and there's no real power and force in anything. And Nimrod summarily decides to throw Avram into a burning furnace, and a miracle happens, and Avram survives. So Avram doesn't just recognize Hashem; he is actively promoting and revealing Hashem in the world to the extent that he's giving his life, putting his life on the line to promote and to share and to publicize God's name. And yet the Torah skips all of that. There's no discussion in the Torah itself, in written Torah, of Avram's early life, of Avram's visits to the church, of Avram's battling Nimrod. That we know from our sages, or from the oral Torah. But the written Torah, the first introduction we have of Avram is God said to Avram, leave your father's home. The Torah mentions Avram in the previous Torah portion, just a few verses. Avram's born, gets married, and now this Torah portion, God says to Avram, leave your father's home. Why don't we know about everything else? Why doesn't the Torah describe it? There's certain things the Torah says itself, and certain things we know from our sages. How come this isn't considered something that's biblical? Why isn't this considered something that's important enough to make it into the written Torah? And the answer is that this the omission of Avram's earlier life and the Torah's first description of Avram with this phrase tells us a lot about what a Jew is. What is a Jew? So, in the world, it says the Torah that God made the world with 4 elements. He made the world 4 elements, 4 classifications in creation. There's the inanimate, there's vegetation, there's animals and human, and then it says in other Svarim, it says in the Kuzari, in earlier Rishonim, and earlier Jewish philosophers, were all had divine inspiration, as it says in Yom Yom, that all of the Torah classics written till the time of the pogroms in 1650s were all written with divine inspiration. So in the Kuzari, in other books, it says that there's a 5th class in creation, there's a 5th part of creation, and the 5th part of creation is the Jew. That's what it says in the Kuzari. The question is, why don't we say there are 5 parts of creation? Say there's 5, instead of saying that there are 4 classifications, and then say there is there's also a 5th one. Why don't we say to begin with? Why doesn't it say in the description of the earlier Jewish philosophers that not that there's 4 plus 1, which is the way it says it. It should have said there's 5. There's inanimate, there's vegetation, there's animal, there's human, and there are Jews. It's not the way it says. It says there are 4, and then there's a 5th class. Why not say to begin with that there are 5 classes, that there are 5 groups? The reason it doesn't say it that way is because the Jews aren't just another class in creation. They aren't just a 5th level within creation. The Jewish people are actually not part of the 4 groups of creation. They are, and why not? All of these 4 groups. Of course, there's a vast difference between the inanimate matter of rocks and water and an animal and a human. It's huge gap between what the kind of spirituality and sophistication you see between inanimate and human. Huge. But the distance between them is still limited. The distance between 1 and a million is huge distance, but a million compared to the infinite isn't. The distance between a million and the infinite is not a bigger difference. It's incomparable. There's compared to infinite, a million and one are the same. The difference between a man and a rock, there's how much spirituality, how much sophistication, but they're all in the same realm of creation. All things that God created, the things that God made. A Jew is not another thing that God made. A Jew is a part of God. So just like Hashem has no definition, Hashem is beyond all definitions, beyond all classifications. Hashem has no limitation. And all the things that God made with limitations. God made that they should have certain parameters and characteristics and properties. So all the four things, the four classifications in creation, inanimate, vegetation, animals, and humans, they're all made with their limitations. However, Hashem is not in any of these categories because He's the creator. He made all these limitations. And just like Hashem is not considered part of these groups, so too a Jew is also not. Why not? Because what is a Jew? A Jew is, as it says in Tanya chapter 2, a Jew is a part of God. Let's just dumb this down for a second. Like, what makes a Jew is obviously not being religious, right? Because if you're not religious, you're still Jewish. What makes a Jew is obviously not blood, because you're still Jewish even if you don't have Jewish blood. If you convert to Judaism, you're Jewish. You don't have to be white, Japanese, Chinese. Any person could be Jewish. So it's certainly not blood. It's not a race. It's not a religion. It's not a language. It's not like I'll go speak the same language. So what is the Jew? The Jew is a Jew is an actual part of God. Hashem took a part of Himself, and that is what a Jew is. So, just like there's no comparison between God and the rest of creation, so too yes. Just like no comparison to God and the rest of creation, so too a Jew has no comparison to the rest of creation either, because a Jew is a part of Hashem. How do we?
When we say a person who converts, at that point it becomes Hashem invested in him.
Of course,
part to be that.
Of course, a person who goes to Judaism, they receive a part of God. Interesting, I saw recently, the Rebbe said that you can't delay someone's conversion even for a second. Meaning, once, of course, you have to lock the door to make sure that someone's sincere. But once you know that someone's meant to convert to Judaism, you can't delay the conversion even for a second. Why? Interesting. The Rebbe said because the Torah says you're not allowed to cause pain to a convert. So this person hasn't converted yet to Judaism, right. But the fact that you're delaying him unnecessarily, it's already considered like you're causing pain to a convert, even though he's not converted yet. But this guy is going to convert to Judaism, and you're pushing it off. You're showing disdain to something that Hashem considers very precious. This person is meant to be a Jew, and you're holding it back. There was once someone, Rabbi Gershom on the Gorel, we brought to the Rebbe, and he wasn't Jewish. He was interested in converting, and the Rebbe asked Rabbi Gorelik, so when is the conversion going to be? So he looks at the Rebbe like, it looks like this has to happen right away. That's what his sense is. He says tomorrow. So the Rebbe smiles, and the Rebbe says, 18 minutes in halacha is also considered a long amount of time. But the Rebbe said it should be done as soon as possible. He converted to Judaism, and he passed away a week later, 2 weeks later, very, very shortly afterwards. So certainly the definition of a Jew is not defined by how into Judaism we are. Speaking of convert to Judaism, someone converted to Judaism, and I think their spouse was Jewish, and they converted to Judaism, and they came to the Rebbe, and I don't remember the words exactly, but something to the effect of like the person who converted said to the Rebbe, "I want a blessing to be a good Jew," and the Rebbe said to the spouse as well, also the same blessing. Like there's no difference in a convert and not a convert. So what is the Jew though? The Jew is the part of Hashem that Hashem gives you. Your neshama. Your neshama is what makes you a Jew. So what is a neshama? The Alter Rebbe had various students who would be his attendants. They would take care of him and work in his home and take care of him at different occasions. And one of them was Rabbi Moshe Levin. Rabbi Moshe Levin was an incredible genius. In a yom that he prepared to see the Alter Rebbe for 3 years, so that he should internalize the experience. And for 7 years, he developed and brought his encounter with the Alter Rebbe into his service of Hashem, into his life. So Rabbi Moshe Levin was once sleeping in the synagogue of the Alter Rebbe, and he was an incredible genius. It says in a yom he had the Chassidic lexicon, he had Moichen de Gadlus, some incredible achievement intellectually. I don't even know what it is, but he got it. And so Alter Rebbe asks in the middle of the night, he says, what is Gimel Aleph Tes? What is God? So what's he supposed to ask? That's how he woke him up from his sleep. What's Gimel Aleph Tes? So he has no answer. I have to ask him again, and the third time, he has no answer. The Alter Rebbe said, Gimel Aleph Tes, Alter Rebbe didn't want to say Hashem's name, Gimel Aleph Tes, he alone exists. What he is, we don't know, but he alone exists, and nothing besides him exists. Then the Alter Rebbe asked him, what's a neshama? What's a soul? I don't know. Alter Rebbe asked him a second, and third, what's a soul? The Alter Rebbe said, a soul is a being that knows, that feels, that he alone exists, nothing besides him exists. So the soul knows, the soul believes in Hashem. When you want to, what's the expression of a Jew being a part of Hashem? How do you see a Jew as a part of Hashem? You see this in the idea of emunah, the idea of our belief in Hashem. Now it's possible to believe in Hashem without having a soul, without having a neshama. So what then is the difference? What does the neshama bring to the equation? In knowledge of anything, in our awareness of anything, there are two different models, or two different ways that we can know about something. The foundation of our knowledge of something can be ourselves, or the foundation of our knowledge of something can be the thing that we know. We can know about something because we understand that this thing must be the way it is, right? So the foundation of our perception of this thing is us. I understand this thing has to be here. I understand this thing is the way it is. I and my understanding are the basis for my relationship, or for my recognition, or for my acceptance of this thing's authenticity. The existence of this thing is true to me because it makes sense to me. And the more proofs I have that this thing exists, the more I believe, the stronger I have I know that this thing is here. That's one kind of a connection. That your connection to something is based upon you. The foundation of your connection to something is based upon you. Then there's another kind of connection to something. The reason why you know about something is not because of you, it's because the thing itself. You see something. Why do you know that something you see is there? It's not because of you, it's because the thing is revealed to you, because you see the thing. It's not because of you that you know something that you see. It's because of the thing. The thing is revealed to you. Your knowledge of this thing is because this thing is you, because of the thing, not because of you. So too, there are many non-Jewish philosophers who came to a real deep recognition in the truth of God's existence and God's benevolence and God's kindness, and it was real, and they really knew this, and they had proofs for it, and it was something that they promoted and they shared, and yet it wasn't the same thing as emunah, not the same thing as our belief in Hashem. Why do we believe in Hashem? We don't believe in Hashem because of proofs. We don't believe in Hashem because of logic. There are logical reasons that force us to say that Hashem created the world. That's true too. That's not the foundation of how a Jew knows about God. The reason we know about God is because a Jew is as a part of Hashem in him. What makes us Jewish is a part of Hashem inside us. And because we have a part of Hashem in us, that's how we know about Hashem. It's not because of the logic. Rather, it's because just as we know about ourselves, because we feel ourselves, so too we have a part of Hashem in us. We have a part of godliness in us. So it's even really more than something that we just see. It's not, in other words, not just we have a part of us that sees Hashem, but it's more, we have, even when something you see it's still not you. It's some things you could see, and then you could challenge what you saw and try to understand what you saw. I don't know if you heard the story I shared on Motzei Shabbos, but the Baal Shem Tov had a question he'd always ask his students. His question was, what do you remember? And there's things you remember in your life that you've seen, that you know, that are part of what you're meant to do in the world. But even though you've seen these things and you remember them, when you came to the Baal Shem Tov, he then explained to you what you saw, what happened with you, why these events happened to you, why you need to know about them. So too, our awareness of Hashem is really more than just something that we see. It's things we see, and they're not really the way they are. We can see things, in an optical illusion, and things aren't the way that you the way they seem. It's not just a part of our neshama sees godliness; it's that our neshama is godly. So if you would have all the proofs in the world that you don't exist, you still know you exist because not because you see yourself. You know you exist because you are here, because you feel yourself to exist. It's not based upon logic, not even based upon your sight. You know about you because you're here. So to our knowledge of Hashem, because the Neshama is the actual part of Hashem, our knowledge of Hashem is because of who we are. Because we have a part of Hashem in us. And just like this is true regarding our awareness of Hashem, so too is this true regarding our service of Hashem. Our service of Hashem isn't only because it makes sense to serve Hashem. In the earlier life of Avram, till he was 75 years old, Avram served God based upon his understanding of godliness. He appreciated, he had proofs, he knew that the Talmud says an analogy, to a metaphor for Avram's discovery of God. It says there was a guy walking around the palace, he didn't see anybody in the palace, and he's wondering, maybe this palace has no owner, maybe no one owns this palace. And all of a sudden the owner of the palace appears and says, this palace is mine. A similar way, Avram is questioning and wondering and coming to the conviction that there is a God. And all of a sudden, God appears to Avram. And God says to Avram, I have a mitzvah for you. When God gives Avram a mitzvah, it's a lot more than what Avram did till now. Why is it more? What's different? Avram's devotion to God was to the extreme. He put himself in fire. He gave his life. It seems like the ultimate sacrifice is what Avram did before this Torah portion. But all that Avram did before was all based on his own understanding, his own conviction about Hashem and why Hashem needs to be served. It was all about him and his appreciation. The foundation of his service of God was logical, was based upon his understanding why he needs to serve and how he needs to serve and what service means. All of a sudden, this Torah portion, something new happens. God reveals himself to Avram, and God gives Avram a mitzvah. God says, I want you to leave your birthplace. What's unique over here is that it's something that God is telling him. It's not something that he is deciding how to serve God. It's that God gave him a mitzvah. The foundation, just like we said before about our connection to Hashem, is not based upon understanding, it's because God is in us, it's a part of Hashem in us. So to the service of Hashem, it is not about our decision of how to serve God. The foundation of it is, what is the will of God? What does God want? And with that expression of God's desire, Avram's relationship to Hashem is transformed. It's not about him, it's about God's desire. What does God want? Remember when I was in yeshiva, and I was in one of my holier than thou moods, and I was discussing with one of the spiritual mentors in yeshiva the kind of service of Hashem that this yeshiva was encouraging us to do versus what I felt was a lot better and more important. And I felt like mitzvahim, like reaching out to Jews and encouraging them to keep Torah mitzvahs, is a lot more important than sitting with the Gemara all day and learning the Talmud. This is a classic Chabad boy question. This is it's a rite of passage. Every Chabad boy has this kind of question. So what this Hasidic mentor said to me was very, very interesting. He said, "No, you need to do tomorrow, Maishi. Tomorrow you put on tefillin. Make sure the straps are aligned so that, in our customers you have 3 and 4. Make sure there's a proper gap between the first 3 and the other 4. So what are you talking about? He says, you're talking about your feelings, what you think, how you will, what's really important to you. But you're not asking, what does Hashem want? What does God want? That's the difference between the service of Avram till Lech Lecha and Lech Lecha. Lech Lecha is about God's desire, not about his appreciation, his devotion. That's wonderful. It's extreme till the point of sacrifice. It's true. What's unique over here is now we have something of expression of God's desire, and really, God's instruction to Avram is emblematic of the stuff that his instruction was made of. God says to Avram, leave your father's house, leave your birthplace, go to a new land that I'm going to show you. In that instruction itself, leave everything behind. Something new happening over here is emblematic of the kind of thing that was happening too. Avram, leave everything that you're doing till now in your service of Hashem that you decided by your own understanding. I have now a mitzvah for you. I'm going to tell you something I want you to do. The foundation isn't anymore his appreciation. The foundation is is God's desire. With Hashem, continue, God willing. I'm not sure if we're going to do this once a week or go in order, but we'll see what people want to do. Let me know. We'll see. We go back to discourses or we do this once a week. Whatever. Let me know what you guys think. A great day, Zev. Great day, David. Great day, Beryl. Great day, Aviva. Great day, Jonathan. Great day, Dr. Bressman. Great throat. No questions, comments, or criticism? No questions. Doesn't make sense. All right.
What do you mean by discourses versus...
Oh, like, should we learn from a text or should we learn just ideas?
Oh, I see.
All right.
Where are you going to get these ideas from?